Game begin.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Spike Colony podcast. I am back from my travels to Australia, where the coffee and the breakfast was incredible. Meanwhile, my Renegade podcast co-host just hit up everybody in the team Discord and was like, "Let's have a chat."
Whoever wants in. I would have gotten Tom, but you came back from Australia.
Yeah. So
Tom's probably feeling left out.
With basically, like, I haven't been on a Spike Colony podcast for, I don't know,
3 episodes
since the 23rd of, so over a month.
Fuck it, we ball.
Yeah. We never talked about the quote unquote 1K, the closer to, somewhere between 500 and 1K at volleyball ourselves. We never talked about just how crazy it was that there were 3 mid-sized Swiss tournaments, all won by Basic Mountain. You talked to BK with that a little. We need to talk about Red Green Oath Peluche. I
won a very small meetup with Red Green Oath Peluche.
Yeah,
that was submitted to TC.
That was submitted to TC just to make sure.
Oh no, we're submitting all of everything. As you know.
Yeah, Mike and I are just going to show up to a bar and like play like 5 games of Magic, and it's like boom, 1-2, baby.
One of us won.
Yeah, there was a winner.
One of us won those 5 games.
There was a winner, a loser, a trophy. We can talk about the Doomsday Cabal. Put together by Mike Arnold.
Doomsday on Thursday. I was gonna play mono white stacks, but should I play Doomsday?
I bought all the cards for both decks except for I forgot to buy Sylvan Safekeeper. So
you don't have Sylvan Safekeeper. You have
I don't know
Safekeeper Sigs, and you have no Safekeepers themselves.
It's just a weird gap. It's just a weird gap.
Yeah, I honestly don't know where to start. I mean, I think the first thing I should say is probably, so I want to start with the story of how you had started 0-2 and I had started 2-0. And we're just, and then I don't know, actually the conversation's really like, so 0-2, you're just obviously not having a good day and you're like, okay, well, I'll play it out.
I'm dead already.
Yeah. You're in a horrible mood, but you're playing, and then you rally back to 2-2, and then you're just kind of like, okay, well, whatever. And then also there might even be a chance, but I'm locked. I'm at 3-1 going into the last round. So a draw locks me, and we're just having this conversation, and we're just like, how do you choose a deck for a tournament? And I'm going to use a very bad analogy because I know you hate analogies.
I hate analogies.
But you might relate to this as you're a parent with one kid in college and another kid on their way to college. So I had the privilege of having my way paid through college by my parents. They could afford private university, so I went to Cornell for 2 years. I realized it wasn't working out for me at Cornell. I was studying social science. I didn't really see a future in that, and so I took a year off. I started working in coffee shops. That's how I got started in specialty coffee. Knew I could put my energy towards being a filmmaker a little better, and then sort of did the pivot and transferred to NYU for film school. So then I finished the last 2 years out for film school.
Did you do great at Cornell? I mean, NYU film school is so hard to get into.
NYU film school is easier to get into than Cornell. So I was doing good in Cornell. I actually didn't get into NYU the first time I applied, which is why I didn't do a clean transfer. So I took a year off and then I applied again and they let me in. I was doing good at Cornell. I had like a, mid high 3 point something GPA. I was doing fine in my classes, but just going to class and doing the homework, like, just doesn't mean anything,
It's like, good on you, man.
Yeah. It's just like, like you have nothing to, in high school, you're doing it to get into college. Once you're in college, you're just like, you got to start thinking about what's the point.
Really go to class. He goes to enough class to stay on the varsity basketball team.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, sometimes they're like, "Do you ask your son to go to class?" And I'm like, "What are the penalties for him not going to class?" And they're like, "Well, if he goes to really a very small percentage of class, he won't be able to play basketball anymore." Well, how's the basketball record? Well, they hadn't losing a game in the last 2 years. Like, okay, what's his GPA? Like 98%. I think he's probably doing fine.
He'll figure it out. Yeah.
I think he'll probably figure it out. This is also a gifted and talented school, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Like, he'll be fine.
Yeah. We'll make it work. So one of the things the problem is I left that experience. I was like, Jesus Christ, like college costs so much freaking money. And, I'm sure you're enjoying.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah. And I was just like, and then I left college and now I'm in this like career in video editing and I'm just like barely helped along by my degree. Now, luckily I do have a degree that's adjacent to what I'm doing, but I didn't even learn the skills because when I was in college, I was really focused on a bunch of other stuff besides editing. Editing just happened to be what people paid me to do when I get out of college. Anyways, bottom point was, I think that the system's broken. I think that we shouldn't take, 18-year-olds and force them to make, 6-figure life decisions when they don't even know what they're into,
Oh yeah. Tell me about it. So, I think my son's going to be an interesting case. Like my daughter knew she was going to go to medical school or whatever. So she's actually turboing through college.
Yeah. So to be clear, university is very useful for that kind of 18-year-old, right?
She's going to graduate a year early, stuff like that. And she's doing great, which is great for me because it's going to save me like $100,000.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Bella.
Good work.
Good work. But set that aside for a sec. Like my son, he actually has gotten offered academic scholarships, which I found to be shocking.
You're just like this guy. Okay. You're like, are you sure you got the right florist?
Which he's very smart, right? But he plays like the dumb one. So like we just make jokes like, "Can you even read?" He's like, "I can download an audiobook." So like he's playing this role.
Yeah.
It's just in our family, right?
He's
so,
like it's like
weird.
It's not cool to be smart. So he's just like,
yeah. So it's super weird to me. We're just like offered academic scholarships to schools I've heard of, right? But then I think I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to do whatever he wants to do, and I'm going to try to be supportive of that. But I think he's just going to go somewhere where he can play basketball, and then
figure out for
3 or 4 years. Because I honestly just don't think it matters.
I think he's just going to turn into a professional sports gambler after a short stint in college, right? Or maybe he's got the gift of gab from his dad and he becomes a commentator.
No, first of all, he loops me on the charm front. There's no question which of us has the better gift of gab, and it's not me. So I think he's going to, at least at the beginning, he's going to probably get like some corporate job and he'll be very well set up for that. And then probably do that for a few years, hopefully make a little money, and then probably do an entrepreneurship route. And it just literally doesn't matter what kind of.
You just got to study something. You got to get your paperwork done. See,
you have to get you need to get a piece of paper stamped.
Yeah.
So that you can make the minimum requirements for the corporate job that you apply for. And then, like, I don't think it really matters. Like, everybody knows how to work a spreadsheet, right? Like, does it really matter, if you studied ecology or, management? You're not going to use management skills as a first-year person at a cubicle.
So it's so fun to like compare worlds, because basically all my friends got like liberal arts degrees and then worked in coffee shops and restaurants, and they're just like,
I have a degree in poems.
I understand, but that's the irony. The irony is that I
am a corporate executive.
Let's just call it a generational difference and say that either that or, maybe my friends aren't as clever as you. Regardless, I view, so one thing that my parents, obviously they take great offense to me being like, well, it doesn't feel like it was worth it. And they're just like, what are you anyways, then they were just like, well, if you were to like give advice to like a young person, like what would you tell them to do? Would you tell them to go to school? Would you tell them to not go to school? And I would be like, if they don't know what they want to do, I don't think they should go to school because of the risk of bottoming out and then just being stuck with a loan, right? So like if you do college and then you don't get an outcome that results in any kind of career, right? Then you're just basically the same person you would be at 22, except for you're, 50 grand poorer.
Well, more than, I mean, first of all, you deferred 4 years of income. If you just went to the workforce.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
you would have earned 80,000.
Let's give a charitable,
even if you were at like,
I'm trying to give my
absolute minimum job.
I'm giving the pro college team a charitable, some charitable numbers. But anyways, I'm just saying there's risk, right? There's downside. And like people like to focus on just the upside. And they're like, oh, you'll get X% better income as a college grad. It's like, well, X%, like if you take one engineer who makes, 400 grand a year, and then you take one liberal arts major and they make less than the median, and then you average them, you'd be like, yeah, well, college served both of these people. You've served both of these people.
The average bachelor's degree holder earns $1 million more than the average high school graduate over the course of their lifetime. And like, it's what jobs are you qualified for with just a high school diploma? And that's not like a judgment thing. It's just like, let's say you wanted to get like the minimum job on a trading floor in order to kind of move up. Because if you're a great trader, yeah, they want to find people with like quantitative mindsets or whatever. But how many English classes you went to doesn't really impact that, right? But there's just like a line on a piece of paper that says you have to have a bachelor's degree to apply for this.
But you see my point, right? You see my point is that you're averaging. Doesn't account for like if you had means before you went into school, and then you're averaging also just erases effectively the risk, right? Because that statistic is very compelling, right? It's like, oh, you're $1 million over a lifetime. Well, some people are getting plus $10 million over their lifetime, and some people are paying off a loan that like doubled in size over the course of the 20 years following, and they get washed out by the statistic. And that brings me back to how to pick a deck.
Finally back to pre-modern.
How to pick a deck for a tournament. So I am extremely risk averse, right? I have this like risk averse mindset. I've proven it on this podcast many times. The way that Manos talked about it. I just don't like taking risks. I have like the sort of Reed Duke thing of just like, well, if I'm better, I want to win. And so we're sitting and I'm locked for top 8 and you're 2-2. And I was like, Mike, I feel like you took a risk picking Bryn for this event because your losses were to like Enchantress, bad matchup, and I don't know what the Dreadnought. You lost to Dreadnought. I was just like
I lost the roll.
Yeah, you're like you lost the coin. I was like, why would you expose yourself to that kind of variance? Which is why would you take on a risk?
Everyone loses to Dreadnought the spot that I did. Mike won the roll and had turned to Dreadnought and two of
the point is not what had happened after you sat down to play. The point is what had happened before, that you had ran Bryn into a room of 22, 27, 22. Well, I forgot how much it was. Mid-20s people, 3 of whom were playing the Dreadnought deck, and all of whom made top 8. And all of whom made top 8. And I was like, Mike, why would you expose yourself to that risk? And your answer was like, I don't think I'm risking something. So my analysis would just be like, I think about this Bryn pick as being this like, you can have a great tournament, or you can have a tournament where you bottom out and you find yourself, with way more debt than you started with.
What if I had superior plot armor? Because nobody plot armored like I did in that tournament.
Well, it's a great irony.
Ever plot armored.
The great irony was, I didn't. So I had also exposed myself to unnecessary risk because, there were some circumstances like I had basically just worked nonstop up until the day of the tournament, and I just like didn't have time to prepare. And so I was going to pick the deck that was built in my deck box. Like I wasn't going to like come up with something. But also I had basically been like, okay, I just need to dodge Cam because I don't like Grotog versus Enchantress. However, caveat to the caveat, I added 2 Ray of Revelation to my sideboard, and then now I'm just like not scared of any deck that contains enchantments, because Ray of Revelation just solos every Sylvan Library and Oath of Druids that just hits the table. It's just like, oh, your deck can't draw cards. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to one for you, one you, and then
I want to spend like an hour on this thing that you're saying, but this is not the core thing that you're talking about now.
Core thing I'm talking about.
You're saying I want to talk about.
Okay, core thing I'm saying. How do you pick a deck for a tournament? Like, do you pick something where you're exposing yourself to risk? I mean, and this has been talked about at length amongst like the grinder crowd, which is just like that's like the Frank Karsten thing of just like, look, if you pick a deck that has really high upside and really high downside, really low downside, you're going to win more tournaments, because you don't win tournaments by going 3-2. But the flip side of that is that if you're, Reed MFing Duke, you can just overpower your opponents. It's sort of, it kind of has a little bit of this Iron Man Hulk vibe. But what's kind of crazy is that despite all of this posturing and thinking about, whatever, we both think that we're making safe choices when we registered our decks for the events, and we both got a result that we can be proud of.
I don't think I would use safe as the adjective that I just think that, you just have like a bunch of beakers, right? I hate analogies, but you have a bunch of beakers and you're just like putting stuff into the beakers. I felt Burn Beaker had the most stuff in it. That's why I chose it, right? Maybe I didn't pour enough out when I was thinking about that, but there's just, you didn't
pour out the overload.
I did. Fucking E-Tide told me to play that overload. But just my number one thing is I need to pick a deck that beats Lanny. That is my number one thing. I picked a deck that beat Lanny. Although I was talking to Caffeinated,
and you got paid off for it again. It's just like every time.
I only beat you because you mulliganed to 5, and I don't think that Grotog is a good matchup for Burn anymore. I think it used to be an unlosable matchup, especially when I added the 3rd Curse Scroll. But with your mana control and chill sideboard, it's a bad matchup. If you hadn't you almost beat me. You mulled to 5 and blew up your entire board, and still almost beat my.
Yeah, still just needed to draw a plow.
Anything.
Yeah.
Right. Like you, and I literally you mulled to 5 and had to blow up your own board, and I still almost lost. So and you died to like a top deck.
Lava Dart Barbarian Rain. That's what it was. Because Red Spell doesn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So because I was under chill. So the moral of the story is just plot armor, because I also don't think this is a good matchup anymore. So and Kevin is, no, it's a great matchup, and I'm like, you have to gear 1 it. That's the only way you can play. And he's just like, well, no, that's terrible. You're going to play into Fire Ice. I'm like, if you sit back, it's going to chill you and then cast Armageddon or Winter Orb, and you're never going to cast another spell, right? You have to jam gear 1. Like, you even made that comment when we were playing, and I just laid out all my Jack-a-Buffs. You're like, what gear are you in? And I'm like, the only gear I've got.
Yeah.
So you had Fire Ice, but I just got a little damage in, right? Before the Fire Ice ate me. But I really like, if my posturing is to beat Lanny and you're still going to be on Grotog, I think I got to pick another strategy, because this one's played out. Yeah. But that was, that's number 1 on my list. B, I think that Dreadnought's a good matchup. Maybe I'm the only person who thinks that. You don't win the games in game 1 where they win the roll and they have a turn 2 Dreadnought. It's mathematically not possible.
You win some game 1s where you kill them in 4 turns on the play.
Yeah.
And
then a really good sideboard matchup. And
then you look, if you're going to bring in 4 Mog Salvage, it's actually hard to think about how game 2 and 3 has to go for them. Well, you can just not draw the Mog Salvage. It's a 4 of, so you're 40% to miss.
I kept 1 land, two Red Blasts Overload in game 3. If I had drawn either a land, all I had to do was draw a land. I couldn't lose the game, right? But I didn't draw the land.
Yeah.
Or if it was Mog Salvage, I would have also won. Right.
Yeah,
so either of those things, I would have won. And I had won game 2, right? And Mike had the optimal draw in game 1 and game 3.
Do you have
his optimal draw could not beat my sideboard?
Do you own 4 Mog Salvage?
I own like way more than 4 Mog Salvage. And in fact, I own 4 foil etched new Porter Mog Salvage for the meme version of it.
Oh, right. Because you posted. I didn't check that deck pick for Mog Salvage. But
I have 4. These are foil etched.
Yeah. Be sure to pay a visit over to Pre-Modern for Non-Idiots. Quick aside about Pre-Modern for Non-Idiots. Okay.
Yeah.
It appears that the pre-modern for non-idiot sign is having an inverse effect, in which most people who look at the sign that says non-idiots and goes like, well, that's me. They walk in, they refuse to read any guidelines, and they just say things and then like whatever. Meanwhile, I have anecdotal reports from plenty of people who are verifiable non-idiots who have seen the sign at the door and just been like, well, this is probably too high a bar for me. Like, I don't think that
I'm trying to create a welcoming community for non-idiots.
And so they turn around and they're just like, I am too scared to be an idiot in this little sub community within a community. And so I think that the name should be, in fact, be Pre-Modern for Idiots. And as a result,
the name should just be like Spike Colony Podcast.
Well, that's what the name should be. That's what the name should have been. But
it should always have been Spike.
It should have always been that. But if it was going to be between Pre-Modern for non-idiots or Pre-Modern for idiots, I think Pre-Modern for idiots would have the inverse. It would attract many more non-idiots than the current group attracts, because
I had to put a filtering question on. So I remember we were getting a lot of applicants. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I started looking at some of them and I'm like, this is just spam. So I literally just asked the most innocuous question, which is just like, what's your favorite pre-modern deck? And sometimes people are just like, I can't believe you're asking me that. I'm so like, I just delete that person. Like, why can you not write like Dead Guy Ale? Like,
no. Dead Guy Ale would stop you from. That's what they think is happening. They think if they answer Dead Guy Ale, we won't let them in.
I literally don't want to not let anybody in, but people are clearly spam accounts.
Pre-modern for Dark Ritual haters.
But I love people being opinionated. It's fine. Yeah. It's just what I was talking to BK about. Like, and also, did you see that one day somebody was like shit talking? Like, I don't like shit talking. I like trash talking, but shit talking I don't like. I don't like negativity.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you talked about that the last time we were together. I mean, to be clear, this isn't like meant to be just like some, we're better than you sort of thing. It's just the main pre-modern group is like mostly like, look at my cards and, I found my spirit mongers and I want to play a spirit monger deck. And we're just kind of like, okay, well, that's not what we're doing. So
that's cool. I think the thing that I did, like, here's my foil etched Mog salvages. Here's like my, Kev Walker Jackal Pups. That's like love of the game in another way. And I love anything that people are expressing love of the game. The thing that frustrated me is like people like actively doing idiotic things, asking for advice. Then when you give them like well-meaning advice, and I'm not just talking about myself, I'm talking about people like BK, right? Giving people well-meaning advice and then just getting shit talked for giving people like well-meaning advice.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's the internet.
Like,
what can you do?
Actively, like, I just don't want to be a part of that interaction. So I was just like, just don't do that, right? Just don't do idiot things. And the thing that gets me the most is that like the sentiment that I always got, if I was just like, well, I think you should, like, like, I think that this card isn't very good in this matchup, right? Like, I don't think this card isn't very good in general, right? Like, let's say you had a red deck and for the mirror, you were going to leave your Flame Rifts and Jackal Pups in.
Yeah, sure.
Like, that's awful. Right? Like, you can't do that. It's like, you just don't understand. I'm like, I just guess I don't understand the red mirror.
It's, it's the internet. Like, some people just kind of.
So let me finish this thought and then I won't say anything more about it, at least in this episode. Is that like people are just like, oh, you're so against brewing. And I'm like, I'm against brewing? Like, I am the most pro brewing person. And the thing that I was,
you should see the garbage that Michael J comes up with, and he just comes to me. It's just like, what if we splash this color and play Gaia's Blessing in this deck? It's just like,
I was going to talk about that this episode. That's why I said we have to hold on your rare revelation. But the thing is, if you look in 1 week, in maybe 14 days time, we had black blue Psychonaut, red green Oath Peluche, mono white Thursday stacks, and fucking Flint Espel Hermit Knot Doomsday 2.0 in 1 week? I mean, like, and all 4 decks are spectacular. All 4 decks, spectacular. Do something different. Have a reason to exist. I'm like,
Prime Directive.
how is this possible? They all have a reason to exist, and it was all in like a 1 week span. This is what I'm there for. I was so excited. I bought all 4 of those decks immediately. Right? So
on Cool Stuff Inc. with promo code Flores.
I also had to dip into my good. I have a lot of nascent store credited face-to-face games from my long time podcast associations. So I did.
I mean, I wanted to, TOA started posting about sponsoring, and I was just like, oh, we should get on the TOA train. But Fran's probably going to look into that first. We should become officially sponsored by Foilbug. How about that?
I think that I don't know what Foilbug would sponsor us with, but I will take anybody's money.
Yeah. It's true.
Pornhub. Sure.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and wrap on that. Cause I wanted to be like, okay,
Wait,
you won. We're talking about volleyball. So, you won with Bryn. I was apparently incorrect. I mean,
the best plot armor.
The question is, who made the best decision, obviously before the tournament? What would you say?
I mean,
I think the only decision that I made was not asking you for an extra copy of Chill. But if I had done that, then you would have not played Bryn. I'm like, hey, Mike, I only have 3 Chills. Can you lend me a 4th? And you're like, sure, I'm not going to play Bryn.
So here's the thing. I was like, one, it has to be me because I won the tournament. And
no, it doesn't have to.
Right. It has to be
results oriented thinking, Mike. Who made the best bet?
That I'm pro results oriented thinking.
I know you are, but who made the best pre-flop decisions is what I'm saying.
Okay, neither one of us. Okay, Dave Kaplan made the best pre-flop decision, and third place player Mike Harris made the best decision. Neither of us did. Okay, yeah. There were 3 Stifle Knot decks in the tournament. All 3 made top 8.
Yeah, 2 blue-white and 1 blue-black.
Yeah. So I think that that in pre-modern, part of the
caveat to they made top 8. They walked into the top 8. They made top 8 with very little resistance.
None of them lost any games.
I mean, they lost games to each other, and then they lost games when they were playing for seeding. That's like the only times they lost games.
Alex Kavaris lost to Cam because Cam decided to play for first position, and thank God he did.
Yeah,
because that was one of the reasons I made on my X2.
Mike Harris also lost to Dave Kaplan. So, but it was a sweet story. Be sure to tune into the latest pre-mod cast where Mike Harris talked about his tournament. But he was just like, I played against Dave Kaplan, and I've always just been like, play the Dreadnought, go, and I just like I never wait. And so I played against Kaplan, and I like lost because Kaplan's patient and like knows how to play the deck better than me.
That's how the mirror works.
And then so for the rest of the tournament, I was just like, okay, I'm going to be more patient. And then of course he just like swept the rest of the tournament. He just like had a fine time.
The best Mike Harris story was he beats me round 1. Round 2, he sits down against his opponent. I'm not 100% on who his opponent is. His opponent looks at his hand and is like, oh, this hand is so good. But it's not good against Hermit Feb.
Yep.
So his opponent
was Sunny, I think. I think it was Sunny. It might have been Sunny. I don't know. I don't know
who it was. Yeah. I just know the story.
Yeah.
But he looks at his hand. It's like, this hand is so good. It's just not good against Hermit Feb. So he sends it back.
That's stone cold Mike Harris for you. I guess Greg Fenton is a huge vintage guy we didn't know about. The eventual runner up in the tournament. Shout out to Greg for coming out, and I really hope to see him more in the pre-modern streets. So I want to segue. My segue ultimately is just like choosing a deck. I guess at this point, because you're talking to me, you're not going to be at Hartford tomorrow.
I think I could.
You could still make a train. You're like still figuring it.
So. Speaking of having a teenager, right? Like I like always shelve some potential time to hang out with my son on the weekends, but he's just always like leaves me hanging like I'm a
he stands you up.
A girl with her hair pullers waiting for the phone.
That just happens to dads and their teenage kids though. That's like the classic. It's like you don't want to play catch with me anymore. You used to
straight
want to
up,
play
I have
catch.
a teenager. They have to separate and like have their own life, right? But he just leaves me hanging for when I'm going to hang out with them. So so I decided like early on, like when I moved to Brooklyn, like he's just like, oh, let's always hang out on Sundays or whatever, and we worked out together and stuff like that. Then I had a Magic tournament the next week, and I decided I was not going to prioritize Magic tournaments over spending time with my son anymore. So that's like that's a thing that I decided to do, but separate.
Good on you.
On the decks, the deck selection.
Yeah, so it's like, let's go ahead and do the what would you play?
In pre-modern, I think that it's not, this is a bit of a cop-out because of who we are and what the name of our podcast is, but it's not like a pure spike situation, right? Like getting to play what you want, getting to play the way you want, getting to play the cards you have nostalgia for is an inherent part of the calculus, right? And I love to play pre-modern Burn. I love the deck more than any deck I've ever played. And it felt right. This is, doesn't sound right mathematically, but it felt like the right deck I should play that day.
Counterpoint. Michael J hates losing. And even if he's losing with Burn, you'll catch him pretty grumpy in the O2 bracket, wondering what went wrong. Like, you've been lied to. Try not to lie to my audience. Try not to lie to our audience, Mike. But
I love Burn.
I think you love winning. I think you love winning. And I think the point of the what to play, if you're listening to this on your drive over to Hartford, I don't know how fast I'm going to publish. I have to publish caffeinated. So this isn't actually.
We can go to Hartford. I jump into the. We have to get a room.
I'm like literally. I'm 3 hours jet lagged. It's starting at 9:30. So it's starting at 6:30.
If I were going to go to Hartford, I would have gone earlier today and played in the Reese queues. But
yeah, I mean, we got to talk about how you have to stop playing contemporary Magic. It's just like over for you. Just like you should just stop doing it. I think it's over because you have to practice. You can't just roll up to these things without like.
I practice. I play MTGA.
That's not practice, Mike.
That was entirely all of my practice for the RC seasons last year, and I made it to the RC.
Yeah, but that's whatever. That's the point, right? It's like, what's the point if you're not gonna be a gunner?
I feel like I just don't care that much, and
that's what I'm saying.
Really care about pre-modern.
Yeah, exactly. And for all that you care about pre-modern, it's not like we're testing like 20 hours a week or whatever. I mean, I am sometimes, but
not right now. But I mean, come June, are you kidding?
Come September,
you think
by
we're
the way.
Not going to have boot camp?
Come September, by the way, for Michael J and the rest who aren't in the know. LobsterCon is scheduled for September 20th through 21st.
Yeah, we're going to start grinding in June.
We'll start grinding now. Okay.
for September.
Okay. So Hartford, not relevant to us, but what's the pick for Endless Life Brewing 1K zero rake tournament hosted by Endless Life?
If I were in Hartford tomorrow, which I still might be, depending on
not ruling it out.
Probably not. I'm not ruling it out, but if I would be probably like a Dave Kaplan 75 tomorrow.
Yeah.
In Hartford. Yeah, because I don't know who my opponents are.
That's a good point.
Like if I'm playing in the volleyball tournament, I know I have to beat Lanny. Having to beat Lanny it's as usual. It's the only way to the first place trophy is through Lanny. So that's not a consideration if you're not going to be there, which means that the default setting is, I think, the Dave Kaplan 75, which you have said repeatedly to me. Kaplan never wavers. Kaplan's never not in the top 8.
I mean, that's true. It's actually kind of true.
Both statements are true.
It's kind of, I mean, it's true about me, except for I waver, but I'm also never not in the top 8. I'm never not in the top 8. I play a different deck every time.
The road to victory goes through Lanny. That is always true, right? But Kaplan never wavers. Kaplan's always in the top 8. Both of those statements are always true also.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I do think that Blue White Dreadnought, I guess maybe I don't know how to conceptualize this, but one of the things about Grotog, which I love and which I would be playing, is that it is not good against decks that have like a flat power level. So it's like Grotog trades its average power level card for like the most powerful card the opponent has, or it just trades on tempo, right? So sometimes you just win in its tempo, but the rest of the time, like the games that Grotog wins against the Rock is like if it's winning against like Natural Order Rock, right? Where like Natural Order Rock only has like a few cards that matter, just like Natural Orders and Hermits or whatever. Whereas like Lanny Rock, like, a freaking 2/2 Phyrexian Rager is like actually just a giant, like that resolving is annoying. Like he's like, well, it blocks Meddling Mage for the rest of the game and it draws a card, but I can't, but I'm not going to spend a counterspell on it, but it just like, it is going to 2-for-1 me. But it trades for a gush.
Your Psychotog.
But you can't. Yeah, there's that.
Yeah,
but regardless, Grotog also really struggles against trade win survival. Blue White Dreadnought also really struggles against trade win survival. Apparently,
Greg Fenton murdered all the best players in the tournament.
Yeah,
he murdered
except one.
Murdered Dave Kaplan. He
one.
Murdered you. He murdered
Mike Harris.
Got 2-0'd mercilessly. I'm like,
I thought you lost the Hydroblast game. Do you pulled out the Hydroblast game? Oh, okay.
I won the Hydroblast game.
Okay,
it just happened. It's a good story.
Fair enough.
But I easily won. I still get. Oh, so you thought I lost because everything possible that could go right for my opponent happened, up to and including playing a first turn Hidden Gibbons so I couldn't cast any instants, tricking me into blowing up all of my own.
Dude, the Hidden Gibbons was so good against Grotog too.
And then following up with a Spike Feeder. Oh, you thought that was going to be good for him? No, I won 2 turns later.
Yeah.
Just this matchup is very bad for Squirrel Op. I have 6 blasts, 4 lava darts, 4 pops. Like their deck is just every card I draw is just a windmill slam against all their best cards.
True.
Burn.
So Grotog is like really not great against a wide field, whereas like Dreadnought is it can struggle. It struggles in similar places that Grotog struggles, but where it doesn't struggle is like Dreadnought's much better at beating removal because it just plays more counterspell and it creates smaller windows for like if your opponent is like Mono Vindicates, Grotog is going to struggle, but Mono Vindicate is like too slow against
But what I
Dreadnought.
like about any Dreadnought deck, and this comes from my experience playing Mono Blue Dreadnought, right? Jim, I don't know if you remember, but I used to be a proponent of Mono Blue Dreadnought.
I forgot already how fast the time passes.
I used to be a proponent.
Feels like a distant memory.
That deck is the best Gear 1 deck in pre-modern, right? Like you just have infinity turn 2 combos with free counterspell backup. Like you just win the vast preponderance of all of the games that you have these draws against every single deck in the field, especially if you go first. So the only games that are up for grabs are all the games that you didn't combo them out on turn 2. Like that is just statement A about every single version of Dreadnought, including Doomsday.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I mean, that's kind of the big point, which is that like, Dreadnought has the highest percentage of like games where you just didn't play a game, you just won. And then the games that you have to fight for, are in the margins. It's just like if you get a free win 50% of the time, and then like you only need to win like 20% more on the back of your own maneuvering. So Dreadnought's still super awesome against an open field. Especially if a lot of people are going to be coming over from like the legacy tables at Hartford or some of the other tables are just like, oh, hey, like I want to play my, extended deck that, isn't playable in pre-modern and, they'll get swept up. Unless, of course, they're avid listeners to Spike Colony podcasts and they come with the best version of their favorite extended decks from the past. Then they might have a chance. Or if somebody's a super avid listener, I still think, all things considered, Grotog is really well positioned. It keeps on putting up results in the hands of Fernando Gonzalez, who plays quite a bit online and has won back-to-back online showdown
PSS
playoffs.
5 winner, Lanny Huang.
Yeah, I mean, I've had my moments. I just haven't had I don't like one decking the online matches. It makes you too predictable. People just like show up and they're just like show up with 6 blasts.
You literally won the most prestigious tournament with Grotog.
I mean, it wasn't solely on the back of Grotog. It was the land tax days, so et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I did get some good data, which is just that I just had the best interaction. I hope my my top 8 opponent on Oath Plush doesn't take this like doesn't take any offense from this, but like literally I was playing against him and I was just like, I opened up, I knew he was playing Oath Plush, so I opened up my hand and I was just like, okay, like this hand plays, I'll be set up to counter a meddling mage an Oath as long as it comes down on as long as it doesn't come down on turn 1. And then so I play Island.
Oh, you mean in the volleyball tournament?
Yeah, volleyball tournament in the top 8.
Oh, yeah, I watched that match.
Yeah, I didn't know what my Oath Plush matchup was like for Grotog. So anyways, like I was like, I can beat Oath unless it comes down turn 1. And like, well, sure enough, I go Island, my opponent goes Land, Mox, Diamond, Oath. And I'm like, okay, that's annoying. So then we just like
What's
play
your game plan there.
It's just Psychic Talk. It's like literally just Psychic Talk.
And you have to one shot them, right?
You can 2-shot them with enough Fire Ice action.
But it's tough. Okay, and you runnered Fire Ice in game 1. I remember. I
played all 4. I played all 4. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this game might happen.
Well, but it was just really funny because after 5 turns, my opponent was just like, "You're just not going to play any creatures." And then I was like, "Oh, you don't understand."
Have you read Who's the Beatdown? Is this like that time when my opponent had a crystalline sliver and then cast a worship against me? Because he's like, I got my combo. I'm like, cool, you're dead. It's literally one of the core lessons of Who's the Beatdown.
Please elaborate.
Like, it's just context, right? Like your quote unquote combo doesn't work all the time.
Yeah, so you gotta, exactly. Yeah, you gotta go do something.
The matchup you're in.
Yeah.
Right? Like not.
Yeah. But that was just like so funny to me because I was just like, I'm like, do your opponents just let you trigger Oath of Druids? I was just like, man, Oath of Druids is a really powerful card because it's Oath of Druids and Mindslaver in a single card. I didn't realize that that's why Oath of Druids is so good. Of course, I realized that that's Oath of Druids is so good because people play into my Oaths all the time. But it's just like so funny that I was like literally the first opponent. Like I was like the first opponent that was just like, okay, well, I'm no longer going to play creatures. Like let the game continue. And then
Peluche, I play into the Oath all the time. It's just a Terror War.
Well, my deck can't beat a Terror War because it doesn't have Swords of Plowshares or Fire.
A lot of the decks I play, like you can have a Terror War, and I'm going to try to go straight through it because,
goblins can trigger an Oath that just poops out a Terror War or Exalted Angel, but Grotog simply can't because Grotog has to kind of have the creature on the battlefield for a few turns before it turns into a lethal threat. So anyways, the way that game played out, it was just super close. Like they're like, you're not going to play any creatures. And then I just like looked at him and then I passed and he's like, okay, I'll play Terravor. And then I was like, okay, trigger Oath. And then I was just like, I need the Oath to hit Psychotog, obviously. And the Oath just hit a Dryad. But we play on, right? The Terravor was probably like a 2 or 3 turn clock. And Dryad versus Terravor was fine. And then I could like play Meddling Mage, Naming Plow. Anyways, this Terravor was like a 9/9. I iced it for 4 turns straight trying to get to a Psychotog. And it just didn't happen. And then that was it.
Great story. In the Swiss, we both played another pre-modcast host, Andrew Walker, in that tournament, right? And he demolished me in game 1 because, as you know, the Enchantress matchup isn't exactly great for Bird, right?
Nope.
In the deciding game, I'm like, oh, my hand's great. And I'm like, first turn Lava Man. He goes like first turn Oath or whatever, second turn Oath, because then maybe he's on the play in game 3. So my Lava Man's job was to just kill himself, right? So I'm like, is there any way to even get damage in? Because I'm like, oh man, I'm just so far behind, right? And
you can play the Wheel of Nishoba or Enchantress. Yeah. I love playing that.
So I'm having Nishoba against you. So I was just like, I can't let him Oath. Like if it's an Enchantress, that's bad enough, right?
Yeah, because it can just get Worship or Solitary. Yeah,
really hard for me to beat, right? So I Lava Man killed himself, right? He's just like, fuck it. He just plays an Enchantress and says go, and I'm like,
reveal Ball Lightning.
I'm like, I had a Ball Lightning in my hand, and I'm like, this is how I sideboard it. I'm like, reveal Ball Lightning, cast Ball Lightning, Fire Blast. He's just like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have cast the Enchantress.
Yeah.
I told you my hand was great.
Yeah, triggering Oath of Druids is like a fun. Like I hate Oath of Druids, but it is fun to like. I love land tax, right? Because I was just like, you know, I'm just like, it makes you feel smart when you like trigger land tax, or you don't trigger land tax. Like if you're playing against land tax and then you like don't trigger land tax and then your opponent wins, you're like, that's like literally the most gratifying win possible, right? And I just did that all the time with Grotog, right? I would just be like, you know, Island, they'd be like trigger, I'd be like gush, and they'd be like, okay, it's like my deck when it only draws 1 card a turn instead of 7 is actually really, really bad. Which, you know, we can talk about Ray of Revelation now, because like Ray of Revelation, I think, is the most underrated sideboard card in pre-modern. It's so good that I would splash green into an otherwise just white deck to play it. The other green card,
you made fun of me.
The only other green card, the only other green card I wouldn't splash into a deck is Gaia's Blessing.
All right, so here's my thought. Start with Thursday's deck. There's 14 planes. We should remind people about Thursday's deck, because it's a relatively new deck. So shout out to the Magic Online Society and the first ever MTGO pre-modern challenge that had over 32 players. It featured, of course, F. Paluche, or Francisco Paluchek, taking out first place with red-green with Paluche, but it also saw the sort of tournament debut. I've tested against this list a little bit. The tournament debut of Ricky Thorson, or Thursday is God, playing mono white control. And it's just listed as stats.
No, it's put under stack.
It's
It's just, well, TC Decks has a automatic, like, enough same, you know, TC Decks has to put it into an archetype. So it would be stacks or it would be rogue. So they went with stacks. But anyways, it's mono white control. It is 4 Eternal Dragon, 4 Exalted Angel, 4 Plows, 2 Decrees, 3 Wraths, 1 Seal, 2 Marble Diamond, 2 Phyrexian Furnace, so hot these days, 2 Temporal Aperture, 2 Thran Dynamo, 4 Curse Troll, 4 Mindstone, Mindstoning these nuts, 26 lands, 1 Core Haven, 3 Dust Bowl, 4 Factories, 4 Ports, and 14 Planes. So it's just like an Eternal Dragon, Exalted Angel, Cursed Scroll, like 4 copies of Cursed Scroll, control deck. All of the card advantages generated by Temporal Aperture and Cursed Scroll and Eternal Dragon.
And Eternal Dragon.
And I guess Decree of Justice is card advantage. It's just like a mana. This deck is just Tron. I mean, come on.
Yeah, so I was thinking, like, is it better to just play the Tron? But if you play the Tron, then you don't get the Eternal Dragon engine. The thing that I like about this deck the most is that it has like a lot of the traits of the decks that are attractive to certain types of players, including myself, right? It has a lot of the traits that are are in Playable Dead Guy Ale or in Red White Rifter, but the presence of like all these Mind Stones, Diamonds, and Thran Dynamos makes it so you don't lose to Armageddon anymore. In fact, go ahead and Armageddon me. I'm probably gonna be way ahead, idiot.
Yeah, you'll probably have more mana sources.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that's really attractive. So my thought process was, this is one of the worst Decree of Justice decks I've ever seen, because you might accidentally hit the Decree of Justice with Temporal
Aperture. Sure.
It's obviously a great Decree of Justice deck if you're tapping all of your artifact mana to hit either X or XX or whatever. But it has a very bad fail state, because
let's be clear about something about Temporal Aperture. There are only 8 good spells to hit with Temporal Aperture. Like, you're like, oh, I might hit Decree of Justice with Temporal Aperture. You might hit Wrath of God when you have an Exalted Angel in play. Like,
yeah, just don't play it.
Temporal Aperture is Decree is not the problem. Temporal Aperture is. Hi, it's me. Temporal Aperture is the problem. It's me. It's like, this deck is looking for, like, just play Jam Day Tome. Just freaking play Jam Day Tome. Like, you have all this. You're gonna Temporal Aperture on 2. Like, just play Jam Day Tome. On God,
Lanny, I
played Jalem Tome. You've got this Eternal Dragon engine.
Jalem Tome. Oh my God. They must have had real good drugs in Australia. Jalem Tome.
It's quick about the sideboard. Sideboard is 4 Sphere of Resistance, 2 Cop Red, 2 Curse Totem, 2 Disenchant, 2 Warmth, 1 Abolish, 1 Seal of Cleansing, 1 Wrath of God. What do you think about our only plan against combo being Sphere of Resistance, Dust Bowl, and Port?
Okay, well, Sphere of Resistance
and a little Curse Totem.
It's like a passable card against Dreadnought decks, but you still have all this other stuff. I would definitely be kind of on the abeyance plan, but that's part of my thing with green, right? So I'll tell you my idea. swap out Marble Diamond for Moss Diamond. You don't need more white. The deck already has a ton of white. And so Marble Diamond is a little redundant there. But so add that and then take out 5 planes. So go down to 9 planes. This obviously makes Eternal Dragon a little worse, but still being able to draw 9 extra cards is probably pretty good. And then replace them with 1 Forest and 4 Wooded Foothills. Cut Decree of Justice for Gaia's Blessing, which I understand you think isn't very good in this deck. However, I just shored up 2 of the key combo endgames, right? I stopped Storm. I stopped sideboarded. Sideboarded Brain.
Let's go ahead and
12-12.
Let's go ahead
and I stopped half of Devour.
Well, I have to stop you right there because 2 of the decks you played are not decks, and we don't really set out to beat not decks at Magic tournaments. Like the combo decks are Replenish and Hermit Fab, and then to some extent the Angry Hermit deck.
Yeah. So my thought process though is by adding green, I actually get Ray of Revelation because this deck is very, very bad against Enchantress. But if I have 4 Ray of Revelations, then maybe I have some play against. Maybe it's not good enough. I think maybe they can just over the top you, even though you have 4 Ray of Revelations.
Well, you'd have to. I mean, 4 Ray of Ray of Revelation is good against Enchantress if you have something for the Argothians, right? Because if they just eventually draw 2 Argothian, then you're cooked. But
I mean, I don't even think it's that good against them. I think that the decks that
it's really good. So to be clear, it's
really good against Oath Blush.
To be clear, in Grotog, Ray of Revelation is extremely good against Enchantress
because you can close the game.
Yeah, because they have no time. Yeah.
But the thing is, the ability to close the game in 1 or 2 attacks is the unique feature. It could have been Boomerang.
Yeah. Well, it might be.
Like that's the.
I mean, not quite, but just because some of the Enchantress are solitary confinement, so like you can't exactly Boomerang that just for 1 turn. But this deck does have Exalted Angel, which like can make for a clock. But I agree fundamentally that
like not. I think like maybe the idea is not good because you have no way to you can't just win in 1 or 2 attacks in this deck no matter what, right?
I'm down
even if you have an overwhelming advantage.
Well, I'm down to basically say something that's always been true about pre-modern, which is that the main combo decks, Dreadnought, Angry Hermit, Not Replenish, to some extent Hermit Feb, are better disrupted by Swords to Plowshares than by any other single card.
But they all have Swords to Plowshares backup plans and stuff.
No, of course. But that's your like first line of defense. Once you start getting to your second lines of defense, they're like a lot like dice here, right? So like Abeyance, you can like Abeyance is as good as anything that's going to stop them from 1 turn, right? You need to kill somebody the turn you cast Abeyance or the turn after. It's a great answer for Dreadnought. I think if this deck thought that it could lose to Dreadnought, then it's a great answer. I would hope that the deck that just, starts with 4 plows and, a bunch of disenchant effects, and like Wrath of God to hedge, and Wrath of God and Decree, like Decree is an amazing hedge against Meddling Mage because they can't attack with their Meddling Mage, into potential Decree. So I'd hope this deck like lines up well against Dreadnought. Otherwise I would be like rethinking everything. And then as for the rest of it, it's just kind of like, okay, I think this deck just like beats creatures and goes over the top of mid-range decks with their incredible advantage.
This deck seems best against mid-range to me.
Yeah.
Right. It's bad against specifically the cards of Chroma's Vengeance, Upheaval, and Pernicious Deed.
Yeah.
You just have to play
two of which aren't played by any deck. Right. I don't know. It's just so interesting.
It's kind of bad against Pernicious Deed. You don't have to play into Pernicious Deed, right? Like that's a deck that can't punish you. Or the primary deck that plays Pernicious Deed can't really punish you for slow playing.
Yeah, you'll survive a deed too. Your 8 of your permanents here cycle for value. The Phyrexian Furnaces, the Temporal Aperture, and the Mind Stone all cycle for value in the face of a deed. And then, like you said, you can always just play correctly and just force the deed to pick up 1 permanent at a time. But like you, as you have observed at some times in your career, Eternal Dragon is really good against the Rock, right? It's just like, what are they gonna do? Yeah.
Exalted Angel.
Yeah. 4 Angel
is so good against the Rock.
4 Angel, 4 Dragon is really good against the Rock. It's good against most control. Anyways, it's a really sweet deck. We haven't talked too much about Dead Guy Peluche.
Dead Guy Peluche?
Yeah, playable Dead Guy Ale.
Playable Dead Guy Ale?
That's actually the P stands for Peluche. It's Peluche Dead Guy Ale.
Peluche said guy. Well, I actually want to talk about what I'm calling Magical Christmas Land Death.
Yeah, sure. Red Green Oath
so
Peluche to the
I don't think we should call it. First of all, I think that the existence of Magical Christmas Land Death means people should stop playing Oath Peluche. Like, I think Oath Peluche was always like super overrated, and all of the value that's in Oath Peluche is like magnified in Magical Christmas Land Death.
No,
it is such a better deck across the board.
The Thermokarst Winter's Grasp plan is really, really, really bad against Daze. Okay, like, and it's really hard to sideboard out
decks with Daze. Oath Peluche.
That's not true. Oath Peluche is going to be much better than Red Green against Dreadnought. Like, Winter's
great against Dreadnought, Pyroblast.
Like, Winter's Grass, Thermokarst, not with the red sources in this deck. Winter's Grass, Thermokarst is not it's easier. Well, I'll just put it simply. It's easier to board out 4 Cataclysm than it is to board out 8 Stone Rains. Like, this is the problem with this deck.
You know what's like super Sasha Fierce in this deck? What if I just cast a Sphere of Resistance, which is the best card in the matchup, and then when they go to foil it, I cast a Pyroblast? How do you feel about that? How does that work?
I mean, this is like, the more likely thing that's going to happen is that if you cast it, it'll just get dazed annulled, or it'll get, annulled first, and then your Pyroblast will get dazed. Like, they can also just disenchant, blue white Dreadnought can just disenchant the Sphere of Resistance and move on with his life. Like, you have disenchant targets.
I can't believe you're fighting me when I'm saying like a Peluche Oath deck. I'm saying, oh, this is pretty good, and now you just want to fight me over it
because this is just the mono green deck with 2 Pyroclasms made. The core innovations here.
Much better than
the core innovations here. This is the part where I'm going to start yelling. The core innovations here are like not playing Exploration, which I don't understand why this list contained Exploration, but I'm glad it finally does it. And just splashing 2 Pyroclasms and playing all 4 Sylvan libraries. These are all very important changes. But yeah, this is just mono green Oath with splash Pyroclasm and the full set of Sylvan library. Like, Fran basically finally put his money where his mouth is, and he's just like green decks should play 4 Sylvan, green decks should play, and he's like, these Oath decks, green decks 4 Sylvan. He's like, fine, I'll play 4 Sylvan. Played 4 Sylvan. Won his first tournament with it. I'm sure he's gone up to 4 Sylvan and green white.
I think Fran overrates Sylvan. I kept Sylvan, a fast Sylvan against Elves, and that was my one loss.
Yeah, but that's that's the one matchup where Sylvan sucks. You just board out Sylvan against Elves.
I've played that matchup with green white Oath Peluche, which didn't have 4 Sylvan. I don't remember how many Sylvan it had, but it wasn't 4. And really, like, Null Rod was quite valuable in that matchup. And Fran cut all the Null Rods out of red green. So I didn't draw Pyroclasm, and
that whole not draw Pyroclasm problem is like a real thing. Like, every deck just
if you have Sylvan and a bunch of Wooded Foothills, you're supposed to be able to get whatever cards you need. That's what Fran says. I got run over by Elves.
I mean, that's not how Sylvan works when you have a life. If you don't have a life, then it doesn't work. Like,
I think it is a
don't talk to me.
Deck.
Don't talk to me about Sylvan Library being bad. Okay, like I play Deep Analysis anywhere where the Sylvan is. I would sooner splash.
Sylvan Library is bad. Bad is not the word that I would use. I think that Fran overrates Sylvan Library.
But would you play less than 4 copies? Would you play less than 4 copies in red?
Yes, 4 copies is. So 4 copies is too many. The second one's was not always bad. Like, they could disenchant the first one, but 4 copies is a lot. And he's really giving up a lot by not playing any mulches. Like, I think he just super underrates mulch and super overrates Sylvan Library, right? Like, mulch is really good.
I'm down to play 2 Sylvan, 2 mulch. You just end up with the same stuff.
So I think that the best innovation in this deck is the snow-covered lands. When I saw that, I was just like over the top. And I think that Thursday should probably switch to snow-covered lands. You get so much value from your own Thermokarsts for free.
And by so much value, we mean 2 for winning yourself for 1 life.
I mean, 2 for winning yourself isn't that bad in a Terravore deck. And sometimes, so when 1 life might mean the match,
Mike,
right? Like that.
Just, I will let's see. How do we structure
You
this
will
prop?
concede to my great logic.
How will we structure this prop bet? How long? What's the line you think on how long it will take you to thermokarst your own land and then survive the game on one life? How many matches of Magic do you think it's going to take for you to do that one time?
It might never happen.
Okay,
But like,
okay, so you won't even give me a line to bet on.
No. So yeah, but Lanny, that's because I also rotate decks all the time. I'm not like
I said how many matches. I didn't say how much. So how much time.
So that's a fair counter argument. But like, people have been arguing with me for years over what's the name of the stupid Arid Mesa, right? Like,
yeah. Okay, let me stop you there because I agree with you that it is like 100%. Like what I love about how excited you are about this is because I think you love dividing by zero. Like you're so excited about Arid Mesa. I know. I know. I actually know this about you as a person, which is just that you love dividing by zero. You're just like, oh, like I changed like four cards in this deck. I made it like 30% better, and you're like, oh, well, I changed 4 cards in this deck from your changes that made it a percentage of a percent better, but I did it for free. I didn't have to change anything that mattered. So I made a billion% change, and you only improved the win rate by 20%. It's just like, yeah, obviously Bryn shouldn't be playing Arid Mate. Like it took a hilarious amount of time for people. Like this is just like something that people just like don't do. Like playing Bloodstained Mire and Grixis Delver or every black fetch besides Bloodstained Mire and Black Red Reanimator, or playing Arid Mesa and Bryn, or playing all the blue fetches besides Scalding Tarn and Murktide. The some point of all this being is just like, I don't think that was the greatest innovation of the deck, Mike. I think the greatest innovation of the deck was that
literally won matches. Like I won a day 2 match at an SCG Con last year where I played a first turn Scalding Tarn and my opponent like aided himself on the first turn. I was just like, this is why you don't play effing Arid Mace.
Yeah, but that's just like,
right?
It's like, it's not even fun to discuss, right? It's just like, yeah, it's empirically correct. It's empirically correct to name Snowland. Like I don't applaud people for finding their onboard lethal. It's like clever. It's not like a innovation.
But people constantly make these errors. We have to point them out so that they stop making these particular errors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that, but I'm not gonna call it the best innovation.
Return is great.
I'm not gonna call it the best innovation of the deck. I think the best innovation of the deck is that Fran identified that Sylvan Library was the thing. I think that you overrate mulch. Fran's core point of just like the problem with mulch is that it only finds lands, and sometimes you need spells. Like sometimes your problem won't be solved by a treetop village or a wasteland. All
these decks that Fran advocates just always draw mono land. Like that, I do think that the Sylvan Library helps with the always drawing mono land.
But here's the point: is like if you're flooded,
you're just always drawing mono land.
If you're flooded, casting mulch for 3 more lands doesn't change your position. Like if you have an abundance of this resource, then it doesn't get you. It's just like milling. If you're flooded, if land isn't
closer,
it doesn't. It literally doesn't. It's those cards could have been on the bottom of the deck. You can just be like, I draw four lands from the bottom of your deck.
They weren't.
You might keep like.
When people make these arguments, like they just don't understand. It literally changes future probability. It's like when you do a clash, and then you draw Wooded Foothills, and you need to draw a spell. People are like, "Oh, you should break the Wooded Foothills so you could draw your spell." No, I just did a clash.
No, that's different. That's different. If you need to draw a spell, mulching will not get you farther or closer from a spell.
Of course it will. It changes the distribution of lands in your deck.
No, it's the same. It's the same thing as like it's the same thing as drawing the first card or the 5th card. It's literally the same. Unless you plan on drawing your entire deck, and ironically, if you plan on drawing your entire deck, then mulch will reduce the density of spells in your deck because it'll put them in the graveyard. But unless you're going to draw your entire deck, whether or not the spell you need is the top card or the 5th card is probabilistically identical. You're getting confused with the concept that mulch involves any manipulation. There's no manipulation in mulch, except if you control a Sylvan library, which is like the one place where mulch is quite good, which is clearing the top of your Sylvan library, which means you should probably run 4 Sylvan and then start adding mulches, like a 3-to-1 Sylvan mulch ratio.
I might overrate mulch. I am sure Fran underrates mulch.
I think
that I'm saying I am sure he underrates mulch. I might overrate
Mike, I'll
mulch.
let you in on a little bit of inside info on the mulch versus not mulch squad. So mulch is a superb card. In fact, it's the corner piece of Landy Hoth and Rich Shay's Landy Hoth parentheses Rich Shay's version that he independently came up with, but used a lot of the
Taylor's
same cards.
Version, sure.
It's a cornerstone card. Yeah. But Rich often gets asked, is like, hey, what's the deal with the mulch in this deck? And he's just like, well, the only thing about mulch in this deck is that it's not very good if I don't control a Sylvan library or a scroll rack. So I only play 3. And what people have found jamming mulch into these Oath Terravore decks is exactly the same thing. It's just that they cast mulch and their deck continues to do the thing that their deck would have done if it just kept drawing cards. Like the increasing value. So Wasteland's pretty good. Like, don't get me wrong. 2 Wastelands is much better than 1 Wasteland, but the increasing value of just kind of having like a random, like a on average, slightly higher mix of random lands in your hand is not really worth 2 mana to this deck. And like, that's kind of the point that I make about mulch is just like in a game of Magic, you need like Abundant Harvest or Abundance is a good card, right? Because you get to choose based on what you need, right? Like lands or spells. Like Portent is a good card because you get to choose what you need. You're like, do I need any of these 3? It's like, no, shuffle, try again. Like mulch never lets you get to choose non-land. And because of that, in a situation where you need to leverage the cards, like the finite cards in your hand, the finite mana you have on a given turn to get something, the fact that this card only gets lands is like pretty narrow. Like it's just too narrow.
So 2 things. One, I feel like if you want to talk about Landy Hoth, Rich's version, you have to just concede like a basic point, which is that Landy Hoth Rich's version is a sit there, do nothing deck. And Magical Christmas Land Death is a do lots of things, tap all my mana every turn deck. Like they're not the same animal, even though they have many cards. Right.
Which is to say that mulch is a better fit for Landy Hoth than it is in red green.
But like, I think that if you're going to play them heads up, which is a good way of isolating the variables in the individual card choices, mulch would be an overperformer in the heads up matchup. It's really good, right? Like the ability to get. So one of the things Rich said to me is the reason that he was sold on mulch was when he started play testing with it, the fact that he was constantly basically drawing 3 spells, even though they're nominally lands, right? But like in particular matchups, like drawing like a Core Haven and a Wasteland and a Rishodon, or maybe not Rishodon, Core Haven and a Wasteland and a Dust Bowl or something, your opponent's just back is broken by the mulch already. He knows that it's going to take like 6 turns for these cards to beat him, but they're like all really powerful.
Which is exactly the point. Which is exactly the point is that the deck creates more space for you to capitalize on mulch value. Like the very presence of Dust Bowl makes a huge difference, right? Dust Bowl isn't present in the Red Green Oath deck. Like it's like Dust Bowl means that every mulch draws mono Stone Rains, right? So basically, this is corroborated by a lot of testing from the Terravore Oath crew. There's like, half a dozen people who just like play this deck all the time. They've all tried mulch. They all hate it. Like I think it's amazing alongside Scroll Rack. And if you run 4 Sylvan, the first 1 or 2 mulches starts to look a lot better. In fact, I'm kind of sold on that from it makes Sylvan better standpoint. But the problem is the deck is too tight for space at this point.
All right. So you asked me a question about the Bottle Gnomes tournament. I'm going to belay that for a second. Ask you LobsterCon. Let's say we're at LobsterCon, 7+ rounds of Swiss. Probably we're going to go on. Would you play a deck like Oath Peluche or Magical Christmas Land Death in a 7-round open tournament?
I would play.
You personally,
I would play green white. I wouldn't play the red green deck.
No. You would actively play Oath Peluche in a tournament like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't.
I know you wouldn't.
Like, there's just too many holes for a 7-round tournament, 7 rounds plus.
Well, the what matters is getting out of the first 3 rounds. Afterwards, you're actually in really good shape because you're just going to play. You're going to play like so. Every pre-modern deck needs to be able to defeat nonsense, right? And I just think that Cataclysm is a better tool for defeating nonsense than any other.
But like you have like
card.
A really low likelihood of beating any of the Hermit decks and beating like Fluctuator.
I mean, I beat the Hermit decks, and the Fluctuator deck is failure to launch these days. The Fluctuator deck is slowed down substantially by Sphere Resistance because it has to cast 2 spells and and a Lotus Petal.
Beat
well, not a Lotus Petal in the specific version, but all their lands are non-basic. And I mean, okay, put it this way: by the time Lobster Con comes around, people will be playing the card Sabo's Web. And that card is really good against both Fluctuator and all Peluche variants. So
Blood Moon is also a monster against that.
Sabo's Web is colorless. Like that deck can just go in any sideboard. So if you're feeling a little down,
Peluche sideboard.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Can't.
The thing is, I'm just like, oh man, we could play this in Thursday's deck, but Thursday's deck already murders the Peluche variants.
Yeah, it should. I mean, the deck is like designed to like, this is why I don't like the red green deck. It's just like its core thing. This is the downfall of Ponza, right? It's just like, what if my opponent just continues to draw lands? Then what do I do? Like attack him for 2?
What if my opponent plays Mulch?
I mean, sure, that's also in the fail case of
like the best
fail case of Stone Red. It's the best against Stone Rain, but it's not the best for the Stone Rain deck, right? So
I'm just like, Mulch is a disaster for you if your opponent just has it and they're 75.
Yeah, well, lucky for you, there is but one deck basically that plays it, and I don't think any other decks it's found a home.
I mean, I'm right now in the dark. I'd play
Burn.
Play a 12/12 variant at LobsterCon. I'd play Burn, but I actually Burn's probably great.
You asked me if I would. You asked me if I would. I wouldn't give much equity to. I wouldn't give much share in my deck pick to green white, but that's also just because I'm not a very good green white oath player. Like I make several mistakes playing the deck, even though you basically are confronted with like maybe up to 8 decisions in the game. But I make them all wrong. It's like 8 key decisions. In a
16-turn game, you made 8 decisions.
It's like 8 decisions. But you don't know that they're happening when they're happening. You're just like, oh, let's do this. And then 3 turns, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that 3 turns ago.
Like, now that I think I could win LobsterCon with Burn. Yeah, I think that's a thing I can do. But
I think you can top 8 LobsterCon with Burn and then lose in the round of 8.
Well, my thought
to probably Dave Kaplan
is that Fran said like a mistake that I make is trying to win all the matchups, right? Just like I'm always constantly like trying to figure out how I can win all the matchups.
Yeah, the frequency with which you bring out what about Devourer kind of betrays that. Because it's just like, when's the last time you played against Devourer? The last time somebody activated Altar of Dementia against me was in the PSS 6 months ago. Like, and it didn't go well for them with me doing nothing to respect it. No Guy's Blessing, no nothing. I just had 40 cards in my deck. Like,
so, but my counter argument is he's like, no deck wins all the matchups. My counter argument is like Blue White Oath Peluche does a really good impression of being able to win all the matchups.
Blue White Dreadnought Peluche, yeah. 12/12 Peluche.
Yeah. Did I say Blue White Oath?
You said Blue White Oath Peluche.
Yeah, like Blue White Fran Peluche Janot or whatever you want to call
Blue White the Rock.
Really good impression.
Blue White the Rock can actually beat every matchup, so except for Rifter, but luckily nobody plays that.
Can Blue White the Rock beat Burn?
Blue White the Rock can beat Burn if Burn doesn't know how to play, which is like most Burn pilots, so just kidding. So, don't send your hate mail this way. I take it back. So you're all very smart and handsome Burn pilots.
Watching like this match is like Itai against Pog, and like Pog is like a circle in play and like a million lands, and all the is like 7 cards in hand, and I'm just like, how's this game gonna go? I'm like, what life is Pog on? And Itai's like 1.
He's
I just like
it's a one barbarian ring away.
Food.
Yeah.
Just played in this food. It's like his hand was like mono spells. He took like 6 turns to win the game, and I'm just like, this is great.
Yeah.
And Pong's like, how do you ever win this matchup? I'm like, I don't know. I've always won it from that side, but I've also always won it from this side.
People are so bad at winning with circle and play. That's the one thing I'll say.
Yeah, I agree.
You have circle and play and don't win over and over and over again.
I would say if LobsterCon, I still think, I don't know. Dreadnought is just like, it's just kind of too easy. That's like the problem is like, I want my life to be like a little harder than just like winning most matches without trying. That's kind of my fatal flaw.
Figure out how to beat the other Dreadnought players in the top 8.
You don't have to try to beat the other Dreadnought players. You also might just run into blue-white tempo. Like you'll just run into the blue-white meddling mage deck with Savannah Alliance, and then you'll lose. That's like the super awkward thing is that deck is like really popular. Like it's very overrepresented in my opinion, but I guess maybe the overrepresentation is because they keep on top 8ing events, and I'm just like, well, that shouldn't be happening.
I wouldn't play blue-white. I was if it were LobsterCon tomorrow. I keep saying that. Can we make people forget that blue-black exists? Because that's my LobsterCon deck, which I decided like I longballed this. Can that blue-white like Savannah Alliance deck possibly beat blue-black?
I mean, probably. Like the blue-black still needs to posture as like the thing about the blue-white tempo deck is that it takes away all the gears from the Dreadnought deck. It's like, okay, well, let's try to combo them. It's like, well, we have a meddling mage and like up to this enough removal coverage. It's like, okay, well, let's try to play this suppression control game. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, our deck has like really good threat density, and the threats are just like very, very mana efficient, and is generally good at trading card for card. Now, granted, Dreadnought can win a lot of games where they draw and cast a lot of gush, but short of that, card for card, the blue-white deck is just like good at trading because it's just like weenies. It's just kind of like, well, each 2/2 is a game-ending threat, right? So you have to answer them all, and Dreadnought really only has 4 Swords of Plowshares, and meddling mages to block. Like meddling mage, naming meddling mage is probably your best play. So blue-black is going to be better because it has a better blocker in the form of Psychic Dog, but you kind of need to have 4 Psychic Dogs, and there's also a 3 mana spell, which makes you less efficient. And then you're like, you don't have an inevitability because you're always on a clock, right? There's going to be some two power guy.
How are they going to beat me in sideboarded games where I use Engineered Plague to manage the battlefield and then I just upheaval tog them?
They might be
handful of foils.
They might be diverse enough into Engineered Plague. And they're already packing maximum disenchant versus you, so you're just like giving them stuff to do if they're disenchant flooded.
Yeah, but that's how I literally think that I need to write an article someday about how to play Engineered Plague. People play it bad all the time.
Yeah, but
like, quote unquote.
But if we're going to level ourselves that we're like always getting Engineered Plague value, then our opponent is also going to hypothetically play in a way such that they always get engineered. They always play against your Engineered Plague well, right? So it's like I just wouldn't commit to humans to the battlefield.
If they're the beatdown and they're just giving you time, the objective of Engineered Plague in the context of a combo control deck is not to lock down the opponent's ability to win the game, but rather to buy time to execute your combo.
I mean,
so if they're giving you time,
never mind. Silver Knight is actually
you get the time either way.
No, actually, these are all humans. Could be good.
Yeah,
Silver Knight being a human is super bad for Silver Knight in this deck.
I mean, this just seems to me like I would just cakewalk through this matchup where my opponent thought that all their stuff was good.
I don't know if you like.
Maybe they win game one.
We should probably just test it, but like I'm pretty sure like Savannah Lions is just like embarrassing good. Like Savannah Lions and Jackal Pup are both embarrassingly good versus Dreadnought. You only have 4 plows. Like that's just the rule. You only have 4 plows. Are you going to run 4 Engineered Plague and try to stack up double Engineered Plague on human? Because you're only going to catch a Mother of Runes on 1 toughness against this deck. Because the rest of them have 2.
Their ability to generate card advantage is relatively. I don't know. Some of them have Factor Fiction and Standstill, right?
Yeah, depending on the list.
Yeah, some of them
are more white. Some of them are some white blue, and they just trade for stuff.
But you can just engineer the game in a way that none of their interactive cards have text, right? So like
if they're going to slow play you and they're like, okay, I'm going to play a counter sliver game, you just play on a completely different vector from them. Just wait until turn 7, right? And then cast your first duress, right? Everything else you did was just creature removal. Cast your first duress, see if the coast is clear, and you won the game already. Like they could do nothing to stop you from getting to this end game situation except put the accelerator down on gear 1. But if they do that, they just waltz into your plan A.
Well, no, you would have to. I mean, I think we just have to test this. I still really like the white weenie decks against every Dreadnought variant, like even blue red with Grim Lavamancer and all.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that guy was still on the table. I was going to take my blue red apart to make my Psychonaut deck.
Well, if it's all white weenie, blue red with Pyroclasm is probably going to be better than anything.
Oh my god, I love Grim Lavamancer so much. Do you know anyone who loves Grim Lavamancer more than I do?
I don't know. I don't.
Probably not. I love him.
I actually like Grim Lavamancer. Fernando plays one Grim Lavamancer in Grotog, which I think is really cool until you realize you need one of your red sources to be like around forever. And tapping every turn, and one of the red sources that tap every turn for you deals 1 damage to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say like 2 to them, 1 to me every single time.
Yeah, it's just like all of a sudden this Grim Lava Man is looking like an Orcish Artillery. It's just doing its impression.
Oh no, Orcish Artillery is 2 to them, 3 to me.
What do we have to say about PDGA? Is it a good deck?
You can't play that deck in a long tournament. You can play it in a meetup, right? If you're gonna play like sub 5 rounds, I think that it's fine. You can't.
Every single turn Fran was playing in that video. Every turn Fran was playing in that video, he's like, well, if my opponent plays Armageddon here, I'm not in good shape. So if my opponent plays Gush Armageddon here, I'm in really bad shape.
So the thing that's weird to me is like Fran and Tom think it's quote the best control deck. It's not any kind of a control deck. It's just the rock, right? Like it plays the control role contextually, right? In a lot of matchups where the opponent just defaults.
Yeah, but this is just like an old man Mike, thing where you where the line in your head is just like very specific and very like hard for you to convey to other people. It's just like I agree with you.
Any kind of a threat,
look, Mike,
that doesn't have power and toughness.
Mike, to be clear, I don't understand control, so we're not going to get far in this argument. But
okay,
but like my understanding of control is that they're all the rock, and I'm not interested. Like.
So no,
like it's just like how hard is the rock? Are you like soft rock, or are you like heavy metal? Like some decks are heavier rocks than others, but they're all the rock.
All right, so let me just ask you a simple question, Lanny. Imagine a card that might beat you, right? It's a card that might beat you. In different time periods, people like Zvi Mashowitz have talked about this in the context of the fundamental turn, where like Wrath of God beat you, right? It didn't deal 20 damage, but you lost to Wrath of God.
Yeah, that I conceptualize losing and winning on this. Yeah.
Yeah, so Patrick Chapin talks about a thing called semi-soft locks, which is different than threats. They're like threats that have a little bit more oomph, right? But they're not necessarily the thing that did 20 damage to you, but they might be, right? Imagine any card like that doesn't beat you by attacking, right? It could still be a creature, right? But it doesn't beat you by attacking. My problem with defining playable Dead Guy Ale as a control deck is it has nothing to say about any of those cards. Like, that's most of the ways you might lose.
I mean,
so somebody had a thing that might beat you, but it didn't beat you by attacking. I think that's a lot of cards.
Look, I understand where you're getting at here, but like, dude, just control decks are decks that have removal, and then that's just what a control deck is. Like, that's just what it is.
Yeah, this is a removal deck.
Like,
it's a little disruptive.
Do you have? It's like, do you play 4 Swords of Plowshares? Like, oh, you could be any deck. It's like, do you have 4 Swords of Plowshares and some number of Disenchant, Vindicate, Vendetta, Pernicious Deed, Wall of Roots,
got, like,
loosely. Yeah,
I played Eradicate, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right, like you got Wrath of God. Like, come on, the deck has Wrath of God. It's just a control deck. Like, what deck plays Wrath of God?
It's
Only control decks.
Deck. It's got tons of removal.
Yeah, but that control decks are removal decks.
Other than playing,
I know what you're saying. I understand. Like control, you actually have to control this. Control. I guess I don't understand because I still don't understand control. But it's a deck with removal.
I think you understand control. You just don't know how to. Maybe you don't. It's really hard for me to tell. It's so hard for me to tell because you're so smart at Magic, but you don't understand control. How is that possible? You're so smart. Like when you talk about like which kind of cards generate leverage and why, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I wrote that down. That was so good. Like that's the thing that's in my head. But you're just like, I can't really tell if I should have smothered that or swords. Like, maybe I should have let it in. Maybe I should have let it hit me so that I could wrath later. Like, I just don't know. My hand is a smother or wrath swords. I guess I lose.
Very accurate description. It just happens to me. I'm just like, well, I'm going to play another deck. That was like Fran's deck. Like Fran's deck had me answer one difficult question and I just like failed the answer so hard. I just like never wanted to play it again. I was just like, why? How do you solve this problem? I don't know.
My favorite thing that happened while you were gone in Australia was Fran just being like, so the Landstill versus Oath Pollution matchup.
Yeah,
I guess I was wrong. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, you can never lose that matchup from the blue-white side if you know what's going on. Like, I beat Roman because he had never played the format before.
That's what it takes. That's what it takes.
Other reason.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It's so interesting. Like I wish there was like time for these things to be like worked out and sharpened, but realistically all that's happened is that Fran has just added more variance to the mix of like what you can expect so like, I guess I've done this soapbox before, so there's no point in doing it again. But the point is you show up to a tournament, somebody's playing a Fran 75 and you're just like, come on. Like, you know, I've never seen you. I've never met you before. You know, how do you know about this deck? It's like, oh, I saw a YouTube video. I'm just like, that's great. It's like the guy playing Oath Blush that top 8'd with Oath Blush that's asking me if I'm going to trigger Oath, right? You know, just like clearly, you know, hasn't seen some of the format dynamics, just playing Oath Blush 75. It's like 75, 475, like a Fran list. So Fran just keeps on making these videos, putting these deck lists out there. And then, you know, you sleeve up for a tournament. You're like, oh, somebody's going to be playing a Fran deck. But now it used to be a Fran deck was just like blue-white Dreadnought or...
without Enlightened Tutor.
Yeah. Well, Blue Light Dreadnought with one copy of Enlightened Tutor because they just didn't see the newer videos. You know, but now it's just like, oh, a Fran deck can be black-white, it can be red-green, it can be green-white, it can be blue-white, it can be blue-white. You know, somebody might roll up and they're just like, oh, I really love the one video with the Parallax Tides, like the blue-white Parallax Tides deck, and just
I was going to play that deck.
Yeah, like the Parallax Weenie deck. I hate it. Like, I played Replenish against.
I think you lost in that matchup. That's why I thought about playing it.
Oh yeah, because I lost from Grotog versus Solution. Yeah. Yeah, Grotog's really bad against Exalted Angel, Plowshares, Parallax Wave. Unless maybe Armageddon's good against that day. Might not be. Might be. Anyways, what's so annoying is that when you're playing against like a deck with blue-white lands and like creatures, you don't know if they have Savannah lands. You don't know if they have Mana Leak. They all have Meddling Mage, right? Every single deck has Meddling Mage and probably Exalted Angel, and they tend to have lots of Mother of Runes, and they always have 4 Swords of Plowshares. But after that, if you're playing Replenish, you're like, I don't know if I should be like hanging back and building up my mana because I need to beat a Mana Leak. But then they'll just be like, oh, like I actually play Wasteland in my version. So they'll like Wasteland you, and you'll be like, man, I needed to go last turn instead of... Anyways. It's starting to make my head spin, but it's a good thing for the format, right? You just sit it down for your opponent. They play a land. You still have no idea what they're up to. You know, they might even be a burn deck with Scalding Tarn.
Well, they wouldn't specifically have Scalding Tarn, I think. All right, I'm going to ask you a couple questions that we went over while you were gone with different co-hosts. I just wonder what you thought about.
You'll have to catch me up on Aaron's. I still haven't listened to Aaron's, so.
I mean, I sent it to you like a week ago. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've been traveling. Can't just like sit down and listen to a podcast.
So, what do you think are the 3 best creatures in pre-modern?
I mean, I listened to this debate.
Okay.
I think you make a fair case for Mog Fantastic. But the three best creatures in pre-modern are still the same three creatures. They are Meddling Mage, Goblin Lackey, and one of the creatures that matter from mid-range decks, be it Terravor, Exalted Angel. I would put Wall of Blossoms in there if it wasn't in such a bad deck. Mistress Factory is probably, or Treetop Village is actually is probably number 3 if we're being realistic.
How can you rate any of those cards against Dreadnought? I think Dreadnought's the best card.
Yeah, sure. Phyrexian Dreadnought. So it's Goblin Lackey, Meddling Mage, and Phyrexian Dreadnought, followed by Treetop Village, Terravor, and Mog Fanatic gets to have some.
I have Mog Fanatic ahead of Lackey, but that's probably wrong.
That's just because you play Burn.
No, it's actually the reason I didn't have Mog Fanatic that high. I actually have it that high because I watched Mash Legs beat Caffeination.
I heard I hear the defense.
Amazing.
Yeah, but the problem with this story is that this is like a cool thing that happened one time on camera. Meanwhile, people have just been annihilated by Goblin Lackey quietly every single day. Every single day that pre-modern is played, somebody is just getting their face bashed in by triple Black Lotus on a 1/1. It's just like, yeah. 1 damage is really cool.
Really.
What about 1 damage plus as many Black Lotuses as I want?
He's really good. He's good.
Like
he might be better than Mog Fanatic.
I like the Mog Fanatic debate, but but
it's just all the people who were like Deranged Hermit, Exalted Angel. I'm like, those are good creatures.
Yeah.
Have you read Meddling Mage?
Yeah.
Have you seen how many victories Phyrexian Dreadnought has lined up?
As far as match it, let's talk wins above replacement for mage Lackey and Dreadnought. It's just like they're a order of magnitude. They're like plus 85% when drawn and cast compared to like the next best creature.
So I guess if you're thinking top 5 cards in pre-modern, it's probably like Gush, Oath, Dreadnought, Lackey, and Meddling Mage.
The top 5 cards on just cards is Swords of Plowshares at number 1 by like an enormous margin, because without Plow, there's just simply isn't like half of the format. Like just bunch of decks don't exist. A bunch of decks that don't exist because of Plow exist all of a sudden, and everything, nothing's the same, right?
And without it, good luck containing
Dreadnought,
Goblin Lackey and Dreadnought.
Yeah, and what does Meddling Mage do? It just stops Swords of Plowshares. It's his number 1 job. Piculo runs out onto the battlefield and he's got a stack of cue cards and the top one says Swords of Plowshares. And then, whenever he runs out into a basic mountain, he flips through his cue cards. He's like, crap. I guess shock.
It's shock.
But regardless, it's just so Swords of Plowshares is number 1. Oath of Druid, Survival of the Fittest, obviously are super insane.
Both of those
I think Gush is super good.
Both really good.
Yeah, obviously Dreadnought is good. Hermit Druid is good. The entire Legacy band list is basically on there, right? So Gush, not Deranged Hermit, but Hermit Druid.
So you think it's Swords,
Survival of the Fittest, and Oath, and then Swords. It's just we don't have a format. We're not playing the same format without Swords of Plowshares.
I agree. Swords of Plowshares and then the field makes sense.
Because the thing is, Swords of Plowshares is a Black Lotus. The effect of every time you cast Swords of Plowshares, you are getting 4 mana value. This is the same thing. Its nearest neighbor doesn't exist. But its nearest neighbor is stuff like
Smother.
Yeah, it's like Smother, Vendetta, Innocent Blood, Diabolic Edict, Lightning Bolt. All of these are so inadequate that you need to run up
shit about Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. Well, okay, fine. You have to run up the ladder to even come close to getting the value of flexibility of the swords, to the point that you're it's Vindicate isn't even a compromise. It doesn't exile. It's a sorcery. It's just there literally isn't another card. And if you were to print the card again, it would cost WW1 or WWW. I mean, WW1 is Council's Judgment. That card is also a sorcery. Yeah, that card's a sorcery. It was played in Legacy. Nobody plays it anymore, of course, because now you have Shieldred's Edict or whatever. Ironically enough, we finally got there with stupid Leyline Binding and to a lesser extent Prismatic Ending, just because it could hit non-creatures. But Swords of Plowshares in the pre-modern format is just simply irreplaceable. You just don't have a land still deck without Swords of Plowshares. You don't have Parfait. This discussion is so dumb because Swords of Plowshares is just like so much better than every other card.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Counterspell is kind of almost in there, but it costs UU. So it would be Force of Will, right? If Force of Will was legal in the format, it would be like Plow and Force of Will. If Brainstorm was legal in the format, but it would just be Legacy, right? But that's why the Legacy ban lists are the best cards in pre-modern. So,
so this Thursday, do I play Thursday's deck or do I play Doomsday? I'm like really hyped to play Doomsday.
Oh, you play Doomsday. Thursday's deck is going to make you hate yourself because it also has 32 mana sources, and its only card advantage is a card that draws more mana sources. Like you hate playing.
I love Eternal Dragon.
You hate playing a deck that has 32 mana sources, but you love a deck that has 28 lands and 4 Eternal Dragon.
I hate.
You're like, oh, I hate flooding out, but what I love doing is flooding out for 7 mana a turn. Just like, what if I told you instead of just drawing lands off the top of your deck, you could play 7 mana a turn so that you could draw lands off the top of your deck?
Fran's argument is like, okay, I get it. You have like 30 odd mana and no agency, but you always do stuff with your land. But like porting someone is literally a 1 for 2. I used my land and my port to counter your land for 1 turn.
I agree. Mox Diamond.
That's a shitty exchange.
Mox Diamond,
right?
port.
Like, Mox Diamond is a shitty exchange.
Yeah. And Wasteland's bad too. It's just a 1 for 1, right? It's so funny. Yeah, did you see when Phil posted the select all that are tempo, and that just blew up the interview, just like exploded the internet. Yeah. And I love the people
artisanal memes.
Yeah, he's the best.
Never gonna do better.
Shout out to Phil Wynn.
Who's the beatdown?
That's who's the beatdown of memes. I like the particular nuance where somebody posted and it's just like, hey, by the way, Wasteland is in tempo. Like it's just not tempo. Like I traded my 1 land for your 1 land. Like that's not tempo. But it's actually true, right? Like if your deck,
but if you need to get to 6 mana and you kept them at 5, and you attacked twice,
obviously context matters. But no, it's a good point. It's just like when Fran points to his lands, and just being like, well, my mana sources do more work for you. It's like they do marginally more work for you, right? Like my Grotog deck does not play very many lands, but the non-lands it plays are insane. In fact, some of the non-lands might be Ray of Revelation.
By 0 a bunch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like you have a ton of divide by 0. Like Fran is literally he's like, I have a 1 for 2, another 1 for 2, and a 1 for 1. I add all those things together, and you had kind of a shitty turn, right? Like that's.
Well, he's got Cataclysm being the gigantic hammer is really good. Like it is the missing piece, and that's why I like the green white deck so much more than I like the Stone Rain variants, because I just don't like the incrementalism of Stone Rain. It's like Cataclysm is just like boom kapow, like this is the thing, and like I might have been winning by a little up until this point, but now I'm winning by a lot. And like the whole deck, in a sense, is like in service to Cataclysm, right? Because the deck does sort of do the same thing that most Oath decks do, which is nothing. And then it's just like all the Oath decks are just like doing nothing until they do something, right? And so this one is like kind of like a half measure where it's like instead of moding Wrathing with Phoenix Chosen until you like cast Zur's Weirding and Words of Worship, et cetera, like instead of doing that, it's just kind of like, well,
version.
I'm not, my Oath is no longer a Moat Wrath split card, but then I get some points back in the form of casting my Terravors against control decks, and then I'm shoring that up with a card like Cataclysm. But I think that's just a very elegant thing where it's just like I said, the cards in the deck work together. It doesn't function without having way too many mana sources. And eventually that just becomes its downfall, where it's just like the card, like its draw step. The green white Oath Plush has like the least powerful draw step of all time, right? You have 4 aces in the form of Cataclysm, and then the rest of your deck is just like complete air. And so the way that it combats this is by playing as much Sylvan Library as possible to churn through the air.
It combats it by constricting the length of the game, right? Like you don't get bitten in the butt by having 30 plus mana sources if you just win the game.
Yeah. True.
So 1 or 2 attacks from a Terravor does that. The problem with the deck is there are matchups where Oath isn't good and the opponent can answer Terravor. If those 2 things are both true, you just lose to having too much land.
Well,
I think like
That's much more
there's no
narrow.
fix for it.
I find that to be much more narrow of an outcome than you do. I just I simply
Yeah, but
in my experience and
I
in
want to
thinking
win
about
tournaments instead of go 3-2.
Yeah, I mean,
right? Like that's the.
I think the deck is just as likely to win a tournament as the next good decks. That's why I have it, in tier 1.
I think you have to have it in at least close to. I don't think it's tier 1 because they're too expensive, but I think it's close to tier 1 when you control for the expense of the deck. But like I won.
It's just diamonds, yeah. It's less expensive than elves. Are you going to take elves out of tier 1 because elves cost the most money?
Well, elves is a lot better than Oath Pollution on the objective measures.
I mean, elves has a more powerful opening 7 than Oath Pollution, but elves also has a horrible draw step.
I mean, but elves solves that problem by annihilating the opponent in a single swap.
Yeah. Concept is, I think this concept of decks is maybe too large for 2 hours into the episode, but I think I mean, we know where you stand. I think it's like the main thing that's I'm emboldened by is sort of a results oriented. It's like, there's people out there who just pick up the Oath Pollution deck from Fran's videos and they just like go and they just top their local thing.
They crush,
and they don't change any cards in the deck. They use an old version, and they just like go and they're in the top 8, and it's like sweet. And like the only decks that really do that are Blue White Dreadnought, guaranteed second place if it's your first time playing in your first tournament, pre-modern tournament, and Goblins. If you are what was his name at the Mythic Vault, the grinder who won the Madison event, or it's in Milwaukee, or I don't know. It is Milwaukee, MKE Milwaukee. The one that BK went to, what was his name?
Oh, Adam Jansen.
Adam Jansen, yeah, right. So you can first time, you can Goblins.
I thought you meant Mash Legs. I'm like, because he won the previous one.
No, yeah. I mean, Mash Legs is a good example. So but that obviously wasn't his first pre-modern tournament, but it was his first Gobos. So
yeah, my favorite thing about Mash Legs is he's like trying all these brews and he's just like, fuck it, we Mackie.
Fuck it, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think that like Oath Pollution gets to join the ranks of like decks that, even though I find it like hard to play, maybe it's just because it's not the kind of Magic that I like to play, but it's just like one of those decks.
You liked prison decks. I thought that was the thing you liked.
No, Parfait is a combo deck. It's like not a prison, like it's a prison deck insofar as it contains Oath of Druids. It's like well, I guess. Oh yeah. So that was like the thing. It's just like, people are like, oh, like land tax is a prison card. The card doesn't contain the text, your opponent cannot play lands. It's just that if your opponent is not paying close enough attention to when they play lands, they'll probably just lose the game. And like that was like too hard for, it's like land tax is not a more oppressive, like prison-y card as on the feel bad, on the feel bad axis so much as Sphere Resistance, or Stone Rain or Armageddon. Like, I get it. You want to play lands. You play Magic so you can play lands. Like, boo-hoo. Just like, I want to play lands too. I'm drawing 3. So, deal.
Okay, Lanny, you can't compare. You can compare land tax with the cards you compare them to. Clearly, you can't compare it and imagine you will be taken seriously. Stone Rain and land tax are not of the same genus, right? Like,
yeah, one
of them is like draw 9 cards. One of them is 3 mana, set you behind maybe.
Yeah.
Like that. Not
well, it was just like so ironic because people were just like, oh, land tax is so unfun. I don't get to play my Stone Rain deck anymore. It's like, oh, I see you too are very interested in having fun. Like, I'm taking away your fun because I'm making it so that you can't Stone Rain noobs out of the format. What happened after Parfait was banned? The format's mono Sphere Resistant Stone Rain combo deck with Oath. It's like it's like you were just like, oh, my prison doesn't have a fat dude with a bag of cash as the warden. Instead, it has a freaking Terravore monster that I can't get past anyway.
Are we up to 4 separate different Oath decks since the banning of?
I mean, you can just you could just play Oath in any deck. It's just like the problem was Oath. Like Oath isn't fun to play against. Like Oath makes it possible.
Talk about Oath. So there's some things we shouldn't do. I don't need Martin Berlin to ban Dreadnought. I just don't need that to happen. Like, I don't usually play Dreadnought, but but I don't want them to ban it. I think it's like a powerful feature of the format that I'm glad is there, even if I lose to it.
I mean, for what it's worth,
ban Oath of Druids.
For what it's worth, I was like playing against Roman, and I was playing the Natural Order Elves deck, and he was playing Lanny Rock, and I was just like, okay, I'll Natural Order, I'll get a Verdant Force, and he was just like, when does this format start being fun? I was like, I'm having lots of fun right now, Roman. I don't know what you're talking about. And then, of course, you played like a 17-hour Landstill versus, whatever. Landstill
I had
versus
to engineer a spot where I could get him because that matchup's impossible.
Yeah, and the same thing. It's just like he's just like, yeah, I don't really see the charm. So for what it's worth, on the unfun scale, it's very subjective.
To be fair, I said this is the first deck you should play. I fell in love with the format through this deck. He played like 1 or 2 games with pre-modern Burn. He said this is just the same experience as playing modern Burn.
Yeah, give me something that pre-modern is about. Yeah.
So that was where we started. If he had just embraced the Burn, he might have had a different idea.
Yeah,
I bet if he was on Burn instead of Lanny Rock against
the
Natural Order Elves, he would have had a very different experience. You know?
Yeah, but I mean. Yeah, I don't like. I only like Grotalk, right? It's like I only like Grotalk. I love Parfait. I think Replenish is pretty cool, but I hate it when I lose with the Replenish. I like went 3-3 with my last bout of Replenish. You saw like a screenshot of Binary Soloist roasting me out of the game, fire blasting me out.
I didn't see a screenshot. He made a video just for me.
Oh, he sent you a love letter.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
He sent you a videogram.
He's like you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
It had you conceding in a spot where it looked like you could win. Yeah, but I mean, he doesn't know your hand.
My hand was probably all lands. Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't like Parfait because it was a prison deck. I like Parfait because I won matches of Magic with it. That's kind of all that matters at the end of the day. It's like I didn't switch from Parfait to playing, green white prison or Enchantress or whatever because those decks don't win matches of Magic. It's like I just
like Lanny Replenish is a really good example of the thing I was talking about, where you have like 1,000 mana sources. Like you added land and added moxes, right? So you have this really bad possibility of drawing too many lands. But the counter argument is if you just get your lands, you're like 4-drop, your opponent loses the game.
Yeah.
Like they don't know that they've lost the game necessarily, but they pretty much aren't going to win. And it might be 2-3.
I mean, Oath Bluish essentially makes the same point, which is just that like if it's a pretty common the most simple explanation of tempo is just whoever spent the most mana wins, right? So if you just analyze the game on who spent the most mana, so Oath Bluish tries to basically make that argument just like, oh well, I spent the most mana, except for it's just like spending all its mana on making 3/3s and tapping your lands. But Oath of Druids makes this possible, right? Oath of Druids makes it possible because your opponent can't while you're doing that, your opponent can't spend any mana on their creatures. So it's great.
Yeah, but my argument was not that Oath Bluish never gets there. My argument is that it gets there through its enormous mana count, primarily in games where Terravor and Oath of Druids are like 2 shots.
I agree. I think that it's really annoying to be.
There are a lot of people who could stop you from doing that. It's not true of Replenish.
Yeah, the Sphere of Resistance deck, being the Sphere of Resistance deck is a lot less fun for Oath Bluish than being the Oath deck. Like when Oath Bluish being the Oath deck is good, like it's great, right? Like my opponent's literally asking me, it's like, when are you going to trigger my Oath? It's like, I don't know what to do until you do.
Like I was like really concerned. I won two matches at this meetup when I played Magical Christmas Land Death, where basically like I just loaded up on the prison elements. Like I had multiple Sphere of Resistance to play, or I cast a lot of Thermokarst or whatever. But my clock was just like, I'm attacking with a Mishra's Factory, like not even a Treetop Village, because I'm just terrified to cast a Terravor. They might just kill me, right?
Yeah.
If I commit a different direction instead of just casting another Thermokarst. And that gives them a lot of time, right? And I've just paid like infinite life total with my Sylvan Library just so I could just keep playing a game where I'm attacking for 2, right?
Yeah.
And like that's hyper concerning because like in the games where they went first, for example, like in both these matchups, my opponents just easily won game 2, like because I just lost instead of them.
Yeah, I mean what you do. Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it's like back to like the Replenish thing. It's just like yeah, it kind of works because if you can spend like the replenish deck can like go, Ancient Tomb, Mox, Intuition. It's like I spend 3 mana to your 1 or 0 if you floated on 1, right? If you played a Treetop Village tapped, perhaps. And then whatever Frantic Search, Frantic Search plus 1 mana, and then blah blah blah, this that,
Are you
whatever.
Trying to seduce me back to the replenish team.
It's a really fun deck to play, but I need to get I have to fix up the numbers. I'm willing
I think struggles
to,
against 12/12 though.
I think we can fix that. We can fix anything. I could fix her. Okay, so here's the thing that it actually loses to that's super annoying is Replenish is really bad against Sylvan Library. It's like, yeah, enjoy the 4 cards. Those are free. Like, it's really bad against Sylvan Library. And people are always asking me, just like, oh, you cut Seal Cleansing from the main deck. And I'm just like, the only artifact or enchantment that matters in game 1 is Fire Exchange right now. The only other artifact or enchantment that matters is Sylvan Library, and I don't like playing Seal of Cleansing against Sylvan Library because I have to have my thing first, or within the range of 1 turn. It's like once they've drawn 2 cards off that Sylvan, and once they've drawn 4 cards off that Sylvan, it's too late.
It's already too late.
Yeah. And the thing is that it really does kill you. It's like Oath Pollution is not a bad matchup for Replenish unless it's Oath Pollution with a 10 card starting hand. Then it gets really dicey. Yeah, I don't know. I still think Replenish is good. It's annoying to play against a meddling mage decks with it. But it's always fun. They always like cast the meddling mage and like, oh, please name wrong thing. Please name the wrong thing. It's like I'm holding like double Replenish and they name swords, or if I'm holding double Parallax Wave and they name Replenish, but they always name the right thing. So then it's no fun.
All right, so we're officially past 2 hours in.
Yeah, we're allowed to. We are now allowed to stop. We have to make the 2 hour mark because apparently, given the metrics, people prefer when the podcast is 2 hours. I keep apologizing, like, oh, sorry guys, the podcast is so long. 2 hours is such a slog. And then I just like look at our metrics. It's just like, oh well, what are the best episodes of Spike Colony? What are the most popular episodes of Spike Colony? It's like all the ones that go 2.5 hours. But eventually I have to have my jet lag lunch. Are you going to
publish this one first or the caffeinated one first?
I probably should publish just both, and just fucking people can just have a week of
just so much,
just unlimited so Spike Colony. Yeah. All
right. So should we just change the name of Pre-Modern for Non-Idiots? But I don't know how to do that. That's probably super hard.
Oh, I don't know. I'm like I'm probably, I don't know if you made me like an admin on the
I'll make you an admin. You could be in charge. And we'd probably change the banner from Land Tax to Spike.
It's funny. The Land Tax thing is funny though. People are just like, wait,
we did it on purpose. It's hilarious.
I know. Yeah. Some people don't see the charm. I think next time,
are they idiots?
Next time it's possible. Next time we hang out, I'll just like open the admin console on your phone or computer or something, and we'll figure it out. Or you try to figure it out. You can ask AI questions like this. You can just ask bard.google.com. You can just be how do I change the name of my Facebook group?
Probably doable. Yeah. So you think Doomsday this week?
Just because Doomsday is just a much more entertaining deck. I would brush up on how to make the piles though. Actually,
I know the piles by heart.
Be a fun one for MJF. It's like, well, when you improvise a Doomsday,
there's only 4 pile sequences.
There's like, it's awesome to improvise a pile though. You gotta take notes of all the piles you improvise. Like take photos.
I would never improvise by either.
Write it.
I have a shallow grave. Or I have
Mike, pretend that you came up with the line on the fly instead of coming prepared. And then tell people that you found the line while you were playing. It just makes.
I might have to improvise just because my opponent might have removal.
There you go. There you go. That's how you do it.
All right.
I have. What are we shouting out? Shout out to the Pre-Modern 1K at Endless Life Brewing. It's now on a wait list, so the event is capped. Playing no rake cash pre-modern at a brewery with cool supporters of the community and format is basically the coolest thing ever. Not to say you should still go play at events that have a rake like Hartford or whatever, because growing the format is going to be good. I want more people out there playing pre-modern. I want more people crushing me with net decked Fran lists. I want more Frans ideally in the future.
I want to have just a quick thing after you said that. Sorry, I meant to talk about this.
Okay. Lay it on me.
About net decking. Okay. I think that there is a very direct actual response to net decking that solves the net decking issue in one fell swoop. And that is customization. And that the thing that I have had so much joy this week where I'm just basically playing caffeinated, 60 of caffeinated, 75, 59 of caffeinated, 60.
Yeah. Blue, black.
Right. No, mono red.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So,
okay.
but I just had so much joy collecting the pieces to make it. And so you don't necessarily get to make your own deck. I'm putting that in quotes. Not everybody is a Fran level brewer, but everybody
gets to buy Magic cards.
It's funny because I looked at my basic land choice and people are like, oh, you could have done better with these. And I'm like, yeah, I could have done better. And then Caffeinated was like, I think you should buy the 4 different Secret Layers lightning bolts instead of the Baldur's Gate lightning bolts. So I did.
All right.
So I'm
Only
unhinged.
on Pre-Modern for Non-Idiots and 5 with the Floors Instagram will you find a heinous burn deck pick. Not quite Phil Wynn level attention to detail as far as printings go, but definitely getting up there.
It's pretty close.
It's close. It's
pretty close. Yeah.
You picked the wrong deck though, because Curse Scroll doesn't have any modern frame printings, and you have a few things that are just too good to have in the ugly deck. But regardless, shout out to everyone. I missed a month of action, so I really can't shout everything out. I mean, all the tournaments are cool. The Mana Vault hosting is super cool. So Jeff Green, if you're listening by some chance, you rule. Shout out to is his name Joel Mick? No, his name is Noah Mickle, who's been really drumming up excitement in the cube and pre-modern space. I love seeing new players jump into the format, ask questions, start disrupting things.
Meet up at a cigar lounge.
Yeah,
that is baller.
Yeah, so just cool stuff happening. I mean, just the excitement is super good, and so more tournaments, more players. Play the game, see the world. LobsterCon is on the 20th and 21st. The Pre-Modern Universal champs have been announced in Darmstadt in June. So
the Universal champs, you're the champion of the universe?
Yeah. Those Andromeda Pre-Modern players got nothing out of us. So Universal champs in Darmstadt have been announced.
Oh, dude.
I'm already going to be in Germany. Yeah, I'm going to be in Germany.
Oh, you're going to Germany?
Well, I'm going to Germany for Taylor Swift, so I can't go back to Germany. It's going to be a little bit too much.
Did you stay in Germany?
No, the distance is too, because I'm going to be in end of July. My travel, I'm the brokest I've ever been this year, and my travel has somehow ended up being the most busy this year.
Yeah, but you can't not go to Taylor Swift.
Well, yeah, so I have to go to Taylor Swift, and I'm going to Mexico for a wedding, and I have friends moving out of New York City forever, so we're planning group trips to NOLA, and I have no idea how I'm going to pay for all this. Luckily, my parents helped me out because they're Australian Open fans, so they're just just come see the Open with us, and we're like, okay, sounds good. But other than that, I doubt international travel for Pre-Modern is in the cards for me. But yeah, the Magic Online stuff is going cool. I think Hursty's doing his Magic Online thing. Pre-Modern is awesome. We love you. I want to, same deal. Hop in the Facebook group, hop in Discord or whatever, ask us questions, give us some structure or topics to our future episodes, or else we will continue to just talk about whatever we feel like. Love
ramble for 2 hours.
Yeah. Love Spy Colony. Don't go to college. Love Spy Colony.
All right. Bye.